Welcome to the Daughter Arise channel. My name is Yvonne, and this channel is all about bringing you content surrounding childhood sexual abuse. So on this channel, I share my experiences, things that helped me, things I went through. I also cover news stories as well. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can be advised of any new uploads. And don't forget to hit the thumbs up if you like the content. So today is a little bit of a different video. I have invited onto my channel Davina Dobbs-Akerele. She is a certified counsellor.
Hi, hello everyone. Nice to meet you all.
I've invited her onto this channel today to talk about the counselling process. But I'll give you a little bit of a background about Davina. She's a certified counsellor. She's a member of the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy. She's been in practice for over several years, both within the NHS, which over here in the UK is our National Health Service. So she has her own private practice called Time in Counselling, and she works with a range of different issues: depression, sexual abuse, trauma, bereavement, loss, anxiety, self-esteem issues, besides other transitional life issues. She's also an honorary award winner of the Women Appreciating Women 2019 award. So congratulations on that. But we're just going to have a conversation about the counselling process. So again, welcome, Davina.
Thank you. And thank you, Yvonne, for giving me this platform to speak. You know, I really do appreciate you're doing such amazing work, and, you know, you're creating a service for women, and and it's just really empowering. And so thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you for coming on as my first guest on this channel. I thought it was really important to have you on because on my videos, I talk a lot about the benefits of counselling. I'm a huge advocate for counselling. Over quite a lot of my videos, I talk about, besides my faith in Jesus, counselling being a huge, important role within my life. It has been key to my healing process. It has helped me to be the woman I am today. And just from my conversations that I've had with different women and men along the way over the last 10 years or so, there seems to be a lot of myths and misconceptions about what counselling is, what it isn't. There are a lot of people out there that have gone through sexual abuse who don't even know where to start in dealing with anything, because, you know, we have the whole issue around trust and secrecy. So to even think about going to counselling is actually quite daunting. So I want to just ask you some questions around that.
Yeah, that's fine.
So first of all, Davina, what is counselling?
In the most simplest term, I would say that counselling just creates a safe space where you can talk about those difficult thoughts and feelings or experiences that you've gone through, because I understand at times we can talk to our friends and family, but then sometimes we're still left with the aftermath. We're left still open, we're left still vulnerable, and we can get triggered by those conversations. Whereas counselling creates a safe space. It doesn't remove what you've been through, but what it does, it allows you to attach another emotion to what you've gone through, so that when it does trigger or when it does come out, you're able to maneuver through it in a way that doesn't necessarily cause you as much pain. You're able to not live in survival mode anymore. That's what I would say counselling. It enables you to not live in survival mode anymore, because like what you said, a lot of people that have been through childhood sexual abuse or any form of abuse, we can live in survival mode. We can always be on edge. We can always find it hard to trust people. You know, the simplest things can trigger us, but then we're left open. So I think counselling creates a safe space where you can be open, but also given the tools to maneuver when you're outside of that counselling room to live the life that you deserve.
So let's talk about some of the myths around counselling, especially, well, within some parts of ethnic communities, I should say, that counselling really is about, you know, you chatting your business. You shouldn't be chatting your business to strangers. I mean, what would you say to that people think that counselling is about chatting your business to other people, for instance?
It's very funny because when you laugh, I had the same concerns. Like how, like growing up, it's like you don't talk to anyone. Like everything is secret. So, but then I said to myself, you know what? Let me just try. Let me just see what it's about. And on that journey, you begin to realize actually you're not talking your business. You're actually talking what has happened to you. And I think we need to know that actually some things that happen to us need to be spoken about. Because sometimes when we're not speaking about it because it's our business, what we're doing, we're suppressing. And then what can happen? One day, something triggers you and that's it. Collapse, mental breakdown, because we've had this notion of, oh, we're talking about your business. But it's about actually saying, this has happened to me. I want to speak about it. It's like a sense of empowerment. It's a sense of freeing yourself. So I think that myth of it's about your business is just something that, for me, I realize a lot of people that haven't undergone counselling, that's what they would say until they go through that journey and realize actually it wasn't about chatting my business. But I think as well, we need to say, I want to find out for myself.
I think a lot of the time with counselling, and even with the subject of childhood sexual abuse, a lot of the time it comes down to people not having information about it. Like, you know, everything starts with education. You know, sometimes people can come up with the wildest notions about things based on anything, not based on anything they've read, but something they've heard from somebody else. And another example of what people say is that counselling is for weak people. I've heard that as well.
We live in a society where being weak is a negative thing. You know, we live in a society where it's not okay to be okay. We live in a society when someone asks you, how are you? We have this thing, oh, we're okay, we're okay. We live in a society that is, I think, is scared, like what you said, because of the lack of education. That at the end of the day, the way I see it, counselling is put in place because there's a need, not because you're weak. It's a need. I think counselling is not for weak people. I think counselling is for everyone. It's just finding the right counsellor. That's what I always say. I think counselling should be a part of life. Personally, I think it's good to have and know that I can have someone that I can speak to, even if I feel weak. It's good to have someone that you can speak to in them weak moments.
And you mentioned about having a mental breakdown when people don't talk about things and stuff. That's what happened to me in my early 20s. I had opportunities to go to counselling. I mean, I was brought up in the care system from 13 years old. So they had, you know, different types of counselling, group counselling, you know, one-on-one psychotherapy and different counselling. But I wasn't at a stage where I was ready to engage in that. I was young. I was too busy dealing with my life situation, which was quite dysfunctional and chaotic, being in care and, you know, having to deal with all that. It was only in my early 20s, and it's something I talk about in both my books, Daughter, Rise and Choose Life, that at about 21, 22, I had my first nervous breakdown. That was the beginning for me of my healing journey. I had to hit rock bottom first, and then I started to have to face the reality that I could no longer hide anymore from this. I had to deal with it. My next question for you is, how does somebody recognize within themselves that maybe they need to start looking at therapy, going to counselling? What are some of the signs that somebody may need to talk to somebody?
I think like what you said, that you hit rock bottom. We need to get to that stage where sometimes we have to hit rock bottom to know actually counselling is the only stage left for us, when our way of doing things is no longer working. Or we're causing self-harm to ourselves. And I'm not just meaning self-harm where, you know, you might be cutting, just self-harm where you're trying to suppress your pain with alcohol, with going out, with gambling, whatever. I think that is a time where you say, actually, let me try something different. I've done all options. I've tried all ways. I've read the book. I've read this. I've done that. But when counselling, I think, comes in place when all options are aspired, and not necessarily always waiting to the last option, but sometimes that's when we are most open, when we feel as if all options are going. But I would even take it back and say, just when you've gone through something traumatic, I think it's very important to try to seek counselling, try to speak about that traumatic experience so that it doesn't get wired so deep into your brain that you suppress it. I think when a trauma is taken place, I also think is a very good time to try to go and seek some form of counselling, or you've gone through a loss, or just the moments that you know you didn't feel how you felt before. It's in those moments that I think, you know what, maybe I need to try counselling and see how it goes.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because for a lot of people, I mean, I was somebody like this. I spent a lot of time coping with things.
Yeah,
I knew there
yeah,
was something wrong. I knew that, there were some very, very deep issues within me,
yeah,
but I was scared of opening up that can of worms, basically, because it's something I never dealt with before. I was scared of how it would affect me. I was already in a lot of pain, so I didn't want to put myself into anything that was going to cause much more pain to myself.
yeah,
There were
yeah,
so many different things that was going on. And, it's interesting you mentioned about the coping mechanisms, because that is what I was doing for a very long time. I had a lot of different issues in lots of areas. I self-harmed a lot in my teen years, and actually it's something that was quite dysfunctional that I took with me into my 20s, and even, I would say, up until my early 30s, self-harming and, dysfunctional relationships and avoiding certain things. But as I said, I had to hit
yeah,
rock
yeah,
bottom in order to start to realize, actually, I could no longer go on the way that I was. I was quite fortunate because I was exposed to an environment where counselling was an option. When I was in care, they had group therapy for the young people, they had individual therapy, and I used to go along to those sessions, but I would spend my time laughing, cracking jokes, basically avoidance
yeah,
tactics to
yeah,
what the therapist would be asking me. When I had the breakdown and then I went in to have psychotherapy, I already kind of knew a bit about the environment of counselling.
mm,
For somebody that doesn't know what the environment of counselling is like or what it entails, they've recognised within themselves that,
yeah.
actually, I do have some type of issue here. I need to talk to somebody. How do they start to go and look about finding a counsellor?
Okay, so I would say there are many platforms, such as Counselling Direct is one of the most common used platforms. And I would say it's very important that any counsellor that you go to is a registered member of British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy. And why I say that, because that ensures that they are adhering to the correct framework. Because there is some people that say they are counsellors and they are not registered, which can mean that there is no one for them to answer to. And I
Yeah,
think for someone who may be at that rock bottom point, to walk into a room with someone that is not a member of the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, PACP, is, for me, is the number one thing that I would always say is the first thing.
yeah,
Second thing, I would see what their qualifications are, or if they have any area of speciality. So for childhood sexual abuse, is that their area of speciality? I would say that's another second important point to look for. The third point, I would say, don't feel, if you have an initial session with a counsellor, that you have to stay with that counsellor. Don't feel that you can't find other counsellors to see who you feel comfortable with before you make a decision. But at the same time, don't have a wide number of options, because you can get confused. But I think, if you feel like the first counsellor that you meet, you don't feel comfortable with, speak about it with your counsellor. But then if you feel like there's no change, or you feel like this is not someone who you feel comfortable with, do look for another counsellor, and don't let the first counsellor make you think, okay, counselling doesn't work. And I think it's also important to understand that counselling, it's not going to be easy,
mm,
but it's in those moments where you feel as if this is going nowhere, that's when the real healing takes place. And I also think it's very important to trust your counsellor. Trust your counsellor, because sometimes when we're sharing what we've gone through, we can question ourselves, why did we say that? But have that relationship, that rapport with your counsellor, is another very important thing that I would say to look for.
I think all your points are very valid about that. I mean, that's something that I definitely have seen with a lot of survivors who I've spoken to, who have also tried counselling once and had a very, very bad experience with
Yeah,
a counsellor. I always say, and in agreement with you that it is important that you are able to build some type of relationship with the counsellor. I do say to people on videos that I've done, I have said that when you do find a counsellor, one of the key things they must have a knowledge of is childhood sexual abuse and its effect. Not necessarily that a counsellor will divulge to you that they have gone through sexual abuse, but they must understand the complexities of that issue, because in speaking to a lot of survivors that I have spoken to and supported over the years, no fault of their own, they've gone and tried to find a counsellor, some of them that have tried this process, not realising that it's important that that counsellor has knowledge of this issue of childhood sexual abuse. So they've gone to a couple of sessions, the counsellor has given them all kinds of damaging information and damaging advice, which has further caused damage to them. I always say to people who are interested in counselling, if you have a counsellor that you've gone to, they won't mind you asking them questions about their practice background and if they have experience of childhood sexual abuse. They won't mind if you want to have an email conversation or even phone them just to ask them a few questions. Yeah, that's actually quite good practice. And I'm somebody who's spent a lot of years in and out of therapy. So I've had good experiences and I've had one bad experience. But I didn't let that put me off, because I was thinking to myself, my needs to want to be emotionally healthy had to come before this one bad experience. I suppose I am fortunate in that regard, because I'm able to kind of, know that is what I need for myself. A lot of people won't know that. They will just say, I've had this bad experience and that is it. I'm not interested. When somebody goes to counselling, what should they expect when they go? Because, as you know, with the topic of childhood sexual abuse, it's based on a lot of secrecy, shame, and trauma. A lot of things that people suffer with or experience pain and hurt with are things that they keep hidden deep within inside them. So they've never told anybody about it, not even their family, their siblings. Nobody knows even that they've gone through sexual abuse. So how can they be expected to trust a counsellor? You mentioned briefly trusting a counsellor. What does that look like in terms of trusting a counsellor? Is it a thing where you get to know each other over a few sessions before you start, talking about those issues? How's that process happen?
I would say to that individual that wants to get counselling is, what do you need in order to feel that you can trust that person? What questions do you need to ask your counsellor in order for you to feel that you can trust your counsellor? And I think it's very important in the early stages that you ask those questions, express your concerns in order to work together. Because also at the same time, the counsellor can't read your mind. They can have a generalised understanding, but they won't be able to have an individual understanding until you, as a client, explain, these are my issues with trust. These are the things that make it hard for me to build trust. And you have that open conversation so that rapport can be built. So I think it's very important that the client expresses to the counsellor that this is what I need to feel safe. And for me, that will be a warning light, a warning bell if that client does not feel even comfortable enough to express that to the counsellor. And it will probably be no fault alone on the client. It's more probably on the counsellor to be aware and be conscious that actually this is a person that has gone through trauma. So trust is something that needs to be cultivated, starting off from the counsellor first, and then the client will be able to come along and join that journey of building trust.
So in terms of counselling, I do get a lot of questions from people about the cost of it. So I might say to somebody, have you tried looking into counselling? Some people say it's too expensive and it costs a lot. Or they've gone, say for instance, via the NHS, so they go via the doctor on the NHS to get counselling, but it's a one-size-fits-all counselling. And this is something I experienced myself. As I mentioned, I have had a long history with counselling over the years, on and off when I've needed it. Only on the NHS have I ever had one type of counselling that was really beneficial to me. That was after I had my breakdown at 22 years old. That was psychotherapy. Psychotherapy for me was absolutely groundbreaking in my process of understanding what sexual abuse was and how it affected my life, and helping me to understand myself. But every other counselling I've had, actually CBT was okay. That was via NHS, but sit-down counselling that I've had to pay for. And at £50 a time for counselling, and if you think about it, you can't just go once a month for counselling, because it's about building a relationship and feeling open enough to start talking about things. So if you're going once a month, that's not really going to benefit you. But twice a month, that's £100 a month. There are a lot of people out there that cannot afford that. They want counselling, but the NHS or their equivalent health service do not provide specialised counselling for childhood sexual abuse.
There are certain agencies, like example, there's 1in4 that is based on Bromley Road, that specialise in sexual abuse, childhood sexual abuse. There is also Women's Aid that specialises in childhood sexual abuse, but there is a long waiting list. I'm not going to say that there's not. There is a long waiting list, but there are specialised agencies out there that are free, that specialise in childhood sexual abuse. So it's a very difficult one, because I understand that factor of not being able to afford can cause survivors to retreat. But I would say that there is services out there. In the meantime, try to find something that can bridge that gap while you're on that waiting list.
The waiting lists are quite long, because it's something, there's so many survivors out here, there's so many people that have gone through it, and it's like finding gold dust to try and find this type of counselling. So what are some of the benefits of counselling? So somebody has got through now the rough stage of the initial starting a relationship with the counsellor. They are happy with the counsellor, they're working well together. What are some of the benefits that they can get out of counselling? And I know it's going to be personal to each person, but just from your view.
I would say one of the main benefits, it's learning a new way of behaving, learning a new way of thinking, learning a new way to adapt, and being able to move from a survival mode to actually living. And not only that, having a time where you can speak about those things that otherwise you would not have necessarily spoken about. And I think as well, being able to collect tools, like tools that you can have for the rest of your life, you know, that. And I think that's just so empowering, knowing that there's another way to respond.
Yeah.
Knowing that you can build healthy relationships because you've built a healthy relationship with your counsellor. Yeah. Just knowing that there's another way to do things, you know, because sometimes before we come to counselling, we know one way. But now when you go counselling, you're able to see there's actually another way. There's a healthier way. There's a way that benefits me. There's a way that makes me feel empowered. So I think counselling enables you to know, if you have a good counsellor, to know that there's another way to do life. And I think that's just one of the most beautiful things of counselling, is knowing there's another way to do life.
The way you put it is so beautiful as well. You know, the way that you've been able to describe it, because I have found that from my own experience, counselling for me helped me to choose life. You know, that is the name of my practical empowerment workbook. Is about having a choice. Sometimes when we've gone through very traumatic things, it's like it overwhelms you. It makes you feel like you're not in control of anything in your life. And you just roll with the punches, whether that is in going in dysfunctional relationships or destructive coping mechanisms. You feel like there is no hope for your life, so you just go with whatever life brings. And that's what counselling is about. It's about empowerment. It's about giving you the tools and giving you the skills so that you can now have, you know, to empower your own life and make better decisions and do things on your terms. I'm really passionate about that, you know. So I'm really thankful for this interview, Davina.
Thank you.
Where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you, if they've got any questions about counselling process or want to get in touch with you in general? Where can they find you?
You can find me on my social media, which is Timing Counselling, or my website, which is www.timingcounselling.com. I offer accessible, you know, and low affordable counselling. You can just email me at info@timingcounselling.com.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave Davina's links to all her platforms down in the description box below. If you want to talk to her about anything, or you've got any questions about the counselling process, then please do contact her. I am going to be doing a few more videos on this type of topic because I do think a lot of people find it helpful. But I just want to thank you, Davina, for giving us a little bit of your time today to answer these questions.